Okay, welcome back. We'll be doing the Mishna Zayin, Perek Mishna Zayin. After we discussed how Beit Din would question the witnesses, we now discuss the process of actually being Mekadesh the Chodesh, of making the new month, making this day into Rosh Chodesh and beginning of the new month. Mishna says as follows: Rosh Beit Din Omer Mekudash. After the witnesses are accepted, they come in front of the Beit Din, they give their testimony, and the Rosh Beit Din, the head of the Beit Din, says Mekudash. The new month is sanctified, and everyone answers him. Mikudash. They answer as if to affirming what he was saying. He said Mikudash. They say Mikudash. Everyone else says that, and in that way, they're all declaring together, based on the power that Torah gave Beit Din to Mekadesh the Chodesh, to declare the new month every month when we see the new moon. So that's how they would do it when the witness is coming and having a full Beit Din, and saying, going through the process of Mekudash. So that's how the process would go to make it in fact Rosh Chodesh, and all the implications that it being Rosh Chodesh, how it affects all the holidays, etc., that come about through that. Then the Mishnah continues, Bein Shenira Bizmano, Bein Shalonira Bizmano. Whether it is seen in its time or not in its time, Mekad Shenoto, you would Mekadesh. What does this mean? It means as follows: based on the cycle of the moon, every 29 and a half days is what we call the birth of the new moon, or the mulad. When the new moon, the moon, as we described earlier, it becomes more and more visible till you can see the whole moon, and then becomes less and less visible based on the angle with the sun until it disappears, quote unquote. So you're not able see it anymore, and then you're able to start seeing it again. That cycle takes 29 and a half days. So every month, you don't make Rosh Chodesh on a half a day. Every month can either be half a month will be 29 days, half a month will be 30 days. So each one will be a little bit shorter, and the other will be a little bit longer, and that way they'll even themselves out, and you'll end up with Rosh Chodesh always staying along with the new moon. So there's a difference between a month which is Bizmano, when you see something in its time, or Bein Shalonir Bizmano. Bizmano would be on the 30th day, after 29 days on the 30th day, and Shalom Bizmano would be on the 31st day after a full 30 days. So if it's the after 29 days on the 30th day, and the witnesses come and say we saw the new moon, indeed today is Rosh Chodesh, is the 30th day, then for sure you'll have to say Mekudash to declare today as Rosh Chodesh, because not necessarily would today have been Rosh Chodesh, only because the witnesses happen to have seen the moon will today be Rosh Chodesh. So the Mishnah says, according to the first opinion, Bein Shenir Bizmano, whether or not it's seen its time on the 30th day after 29 days, Bein Shalonir Bizmano, if it's not seen in its time, it's not seen on the 30th day, therefore, by default, the 31st day has to be Rosh Chodesh no matter what, Mekad Shenoto, you're always Mekadesh the moon on that day. Rabbi Elazar Ber Tzadok Omer, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Tzadok, says, Im lo nira bizmano, if it's not seen in its time on the 30th day after 29 days, it's not seen. In Mekad Shenoto, we're not Mekadesh it. Why? Shekar Kedshuhu Shamayim. In Shamayim, it's already Mekudash, meaning the 31st day, there's no way that 31st day is not going to be Rosh Chodesh. We know that every month is either 29 or 30 days. So that 31st day, if the 30th day wasn't Rosh Chodesh, the 31st day has to be Rosh Chodesh. There's no reason for the Beit Din to go up and say Mekudash if it was already Kedshuhu Shamayim, as if to say that in Shemayim this was already Rosh Chodesh, meaning the rule is this is definitely going to be Rosh Chodesh. There's no question this is Rosh Chodesh, and therefore there's no reason for Beit Din to have to say Mekudash. That only applies on a day where it wouldn't necessarily be Rosh Chodesh. It's only Rosh Chodesh by virtue of the fact of Beit Din declaring it. That's when you would have to say Mekudash. Let's continue. Mishnah Chet. Demut surot levanot hayulo l'Rabbi Gamliel b'tavla. Rabbi Gamliel, in order to, this really goes back to the last Mishnah, in order to help to question the witnesses, he would have pictures of surot, of images of the moon that were white. Rabbi Gamliel had them betavla, like on a tablet, on a board, bakotel baliato, on the wall of his aliyah, of the room that he would sit in. And what would happen? Shebehen Marat Hadiotot, he would show those simple people who would come, who weren't so sophisticated, didn't know exactly how to describe the moon. He would show them the pictures. Omer HaKazera Ito, Kazed, the moon looked like this, the moon looked like that. Instead of having to describe them in their own words, they might not be capable of doing, but if they had the image in front of them, they'd be able to describe it, to identify it. Masa Ba'ushnayim, there's a story. Two people came and said, right, you knew who we saw them with the new moon. Shacharit b'mizrach. In the morning, it was in the east. The Arvit b'ma'arav, and in the evening it was in the west. So Amr Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. That was what the witnesses said. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri heard this, and he said, Shekerim, they must be false witnesses. It's impossible for the moon to move from the morning, when sometimes you'll see the reflection, to be on one side of the sky, and in the evening to be on the other side of the sky. So they must be false witnesses, so we're not going to accept them. When they came to Yavne, the Gamliel did accept them, even though they testified the moon was one place in Shachar in the morning, another place in the evening. And Gamliel still accepted them. We'll discuss that machloket in a minute. Let's see another machloket. Another case, two people came and said, Ra'inuhu bismano, we saw the new moon in this proper time. But the next night, right afterwards, we saw it in the right time, bismano, like we just discussed, on the 30th day. And the 31st day we looked again and it wasn't there. Right? And Gamliel again, just like he accepted the previous witnesses, he accepted these witnesses too. Amar Rab Dosa ben Harkinas, Rab Dosa bar Harkinas said, Eidei Sheker, no, these are false witnesses. How could you accept them? He gives an analogy. It's like testifying about a woman that she gave birth, and yet tomorrow she's pregnant. So how could you say that a woman gave birth yesterday and she comes today and she's pregnant? How could you say that there was a new moon yesterday and today there's no moon? It's impossible. That means yesterday must not have been a moon. The same way a woman couldn't have given birth yesterday and be pregnant today. Amar lo Rav Yeshua, roa ani advarach. Rav Yeshua said, something, I agree with you. If it's impossible for the entirety of their edut to be true, then we throw out the entire edut. When Gamliel seems to be of the opinion that as long as their testimony could be true in the part that's important to us, we don't look at the rest of their testimony. So, for example, in these two cases, the first case, so just because they say in the morning the moon was in one place and the evening is somewhere else, so what we care about is where the moon was in the evening. Where it was in the morning, I don't care where it was in the morning. So therefore, I'm going to ignore what they said about where it was in the morning and only look at what they say about the evening, and that's a perfectly good testimony, so I'll accept that. Similarly, if they say they saw it bismano on the 30th day and did not see it on the 31st day, I didn't ask you if you saw it on the 31st day or not. It's not important to me if you saw it on the 31st day. What matters to us is your kosher witnesses who came and said you saw it on the 30th day. We'll accept that finished. Whereas according to the other Tanaim, they say no, you have to look at the entirety of what they said. If I look at the entirety of what they said, you see that in fact it's impossible for what they said to be true. Then we can't accept any of what they said. Even if you would just chop their words in half and look at one small line, you can accept it. We can't do that. We have to look at the entirety. The entirety doesn't make any sense, and therefore they're either sheker, they're false witnesses whom we do not accept.